Good day, here are the headlines from the Philippine News Agency. We begin in Negros Island with authorities sparing no effort in assisting those affected by Mount Kanlaon's eruption. Mandatory evacuations have been mounted as the volcano continues to display signs of unrest. More on this from Marita Muahe.
Authorities are monitoring further activity from Canlaon volcano in Negros Island after it erupted on Monday evening. The volcano had a steam-driven or phreatic explosion at the summit vent at 6:51 p.m., which lasted for 6 minutes. It produced a 5,000-meter tall plume followed by sulfur emissions and ashfall. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology of PHIVOLCS raised the alert to level 2, signifying increasing unrest from the volcano. This morning, PHIVOLCS reported 43 volcanic earthquakes occurred around Kanlaon since midnight. The volcano spewed 797 tons of sulfur dioxide flux on Sunday. It also noted inflating on the volcano's edifice. PHIVOLCS warned against sudden phreatic explosions as it told the public not to enter its 4-kilometer radius permanent danger zone. Raising to alert level 3 is likely if volcanic activity increases around Kanlaon and leads to magmatic eruptions. In response, Canlaon City Mayor Jose Cardenas ordered the mandatory evacuation of residents living near the volcano's danger zone. Work in government and private offices were suspended, and tourism offices are ordered to assist tourists affected by the eruption. The provincial government also discussed the provision of emergency services and public assistance. The Provincial Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council of Negros Occidental, meanwhile, placed the province under blue alert. As of this morning, the eruption of Canlaon has affected western and central Visayas. The Department of Social Welfare and Development said the disaster affected 8 barangays and 170 families, or equivalent to 796 individuals. 112 families are taking shelter in evacuation centers. The DSWD initially released over 48,000 pesos worth of humanitarian assistance. Meanwhile, the Manila International Airport Authority said about 29 flights from the Ninoy Aquino International Airport have been canceled today due to the eruption of Canlaon. PHIVOLCS earlier warned airmen not to approach the vicinity of Canlaon due to possible ejection of hazardous materials due to explosions. For the Pna Headlines, I am Marita Muahe.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has called for urgent measures to strengthen the Philippine educational system, enhance social welfare, secure the nation, and drive development. During the ceremonial signing of the Kabalikat sa Pagtuturo Act on Monday, Marcos emphasized the need to improve the country's education system since the start of his term. He said the Department of Education has laid down foundation of a modern and responsive educational system. Through the Matatag agenda, the administration aims to address challenges in basic education by decongesting the curriculum, building more classrooms, and providing learning materials and internet connections, particularly in remote and disadvantaged areas. The Matatag program also seeks to reform and enhance the Philippine basic education system, focusing on addressing key challenges and setting a direction to a more promising future for Filipino youth.
Through the Matatag agenda, we are addressing the challenges to basic education. We are decongesting the basic education curriculum with a focus on foundational skills such as numeracy and literacy. We are building more classrooms and providing learning materials and internet connections, especially in geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. We pursue the school-based feeding program, fostering safe spaces for learning, and implementing other programs aimed at supporting learners' welfare.
The President also signed the Kabalikat sa Pagtuturo Act, which provides for higher yearly allowance for teachers. He said the newly approved law will ease some of the teachers' personal financial burden, which they carry for the sake of the students and their love for their profession. The law authorizes an increase in the annual teaching supplies allowance for public school teachers from 5,000 to 10,000 pesos starting in school year 2025 to 2026.
I think we are all familiar with the situation where when a teacher finds themselves in financial straits, then sometimes they are distracted and spend their time trying to increase the support that they can provide their families, and to the detriment of the actual teaching. But teachers teach because it is a vocation. It is not a job. It is a vocation. Teachers teach because they feel they have to teach and they want to teach. With the passage of this law, we are easing some of the burden that you carry each day. So at this point, I would like to convey my gratitude to our colleagues in the House of Representatives and of the Senate for pursuing this long overdue increase.
The Department of Energy expects the Luzon Grid to have enough power supply this week and recover from the rotational brownouts that hit several areas over the weekend. In an interview, DOE Assistant Secretary Mario Marasigan said the Pagbilao Unit 2 and Quezon Power Plant will return to full capacity this week. Currently, 16 power plants in Luzon are not operating while 6 are running on the rated capacities. Luzon Grid was placed under red alert from 1 p.m. on Saturday to 12 a.m. on Sunday, June 2. Around 2 million Meralco customers were among those affected by the rotational brownouts that hit Metro Manila as well as parts of Central Luzon and Calabarzon. Meanwhile, the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines raised the yellow alert over the Luzon Grid today from 1 to 5 in the afternoon and then 6 p.m. to 12 midnight on June 5. The NGCP says 3 of its power plants are under forced outage and 4 power plants are under rated capacity. The Angat Main has also become an unavailable power source due to low water elevation. The NGCP also expects an increase in demand by about 600 megawatts compared to yesterday. Senators strongly condemned the China Coast Guard for its action in the West Philippine Sea, particularly the seizure and dumping of food supplies meant for Philippine soldiers in Ayungin Shoal, as well as preventing a medical evacuation of injured soldiers on May 19. Senate Deputy Minority Leader Rizal Ontiveros said the incidents showed China's disregard for valuable resources and lack of respect for human life. Senator Ramon Bong Revilla also denounced China's harassment activities as inhumane and even suggested this could be considered piracy. He said President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has clearly articulated the country's position in the WPS during the recently concluded Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore. He adds the government will not cede any inch of our territory and territorial rights, and that they are closely monitoring the acts of intimidation and provocations against the Filipinos. Meanwhile, Senator Nancy Binay emphasized the violation of humane treatment and international norms and respect for human life as enshrined in the Geneva Convention. Senator Sonny Angara also urged China to show restraint and refrain from obstructing the regular and non-hostile activities of Philippine personnel, including essential resupply and medical missions. He said disputes should be resolved diplomatically and lawfully. Senator Joel Villanueva, during a press briefing, reiterated that China's narratives are ridiculous and their claims are unfounded. He also commended Marcos' remarks, highlighting China's deceptive behavior over time. And despite China's unilateral fishing ban in the West Philippine Sea, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources assured that fishing activities continue in the area for Filipino fishers. BFAR spokesperson Nazario Briguero says the agency has yet to receive any reports of Filipino fishers being blocked by Chinese vessels in the WPS. He adds the government is ready to implement a whole-of-nation approach should Chinese enforce their stern warning on the detention of trespassers starting June 15. Nazario also assured Filipino fishers of the government's full support and ongoing efforts to improve their livelihood in the WPS. Former Health Secretary Francisco Duque III pointed to former President Rodrigo Duterte as the one who directed the transfer of 47.6 billion pesos from the Department of Health to the procurement service of the Department of Budget and Management for the purchase of COVID-19 supplies in 2020. Duque made his statement during a House Committee of Appropriations hearing on the budget performance of the DOH and PhilHealth. When asked by ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro to confirm Duterte's role, Duque said the directive was made public in the former president's weekly Talk to the People address. The Office of the Ombudsman has recently ordered the filing of graft charges against Duque and former DBM Undersecretary Lloyd Christopher Lau, citing an irregular transfer of funds. The anti-graft body also found Duque and Lau guilty of grave misconduct, gross neglect of duty, and conduct prejudicial to the service. During the hearing, Iloilo 1st District Representative Janet Garin further inquired about the official instructions behind the fund transfer. Duque defended the move, saying it was within his authority as DOH Secretary to effect the fund transfer because of the urgent need for medical supplies during the public health emergency. He also clarified that he did not unilaterally decide the transfer of the funds to PSDBM and that he was just complying with the rules of the agency. He says the decision was based on recommendations from the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, or IATF, which he also headed. Green earlier grilled Duque over the Duterte administration's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, saying it had further burdened the people. She criticized the high cost of COVID-19 testing, which PhilHealth initially set at 8,150 pesos, far above the 2,000 to 2,500 pesos recommended by the World Health Organization. She also questioned the lack of accountability for the borrowed funds. And that's the latest and the biggest stories on the Pna Headlines. For more news updates, please visit our website, pna.gov.ph, or our Facebook and X account, Philippine News Agency. The Pna Headlines is also streamed via the Servicio Facebook page. You may also watch the Pna Headlines through the Philippine News Agency's YouTube account via the News and Information Bureau website, nib.gov.ph, under Pna News, or on the Facebook page of the Presidential Communications Office, or PCO. I am Stephanie Civiliano, and this is the Pna Headlines, bringing stories that unite the nation.